Hello, my name is Vance Christie, and I've had the privilege of writing this book entitled Timeless Stories, God's Incredible Work in the Lives of Inspiring Christians. And this is a collection of true stories based on the lives of prominent Christians like John Wesley, George Whitefield, George Muller, and others. And in 8 chapters, it is a collection of stories that revolve around themes like family, prayer, service to the Lord, facing adversity, and 4 other very common Christian themes. And I'd like to share just one of these stories that comes from the life of Corrie, who spent some time in a Nazi concentration camp, and then after her release from that, her providential release, she traveled the world sharing the message of the love of Christ. But this is a story from her life, a true story before all that came about. When she was 21 years old, 2 of her aunts were living in her home with she and her sister and her parents. And one of the aunts was named Jans. And Jans contracted diabetes, and in that day there was no cure for that. And it was just a matter of time before it was a death sentence on a person's life. Jans had always been a very active Christian, giving public talks and writing Christian tracts and forming service clubs of different types. And when she learned that she had diabetes, she threw herself, Jans did, into her most recent benevolent project, which was forming a community center for the many soldiers in Holland. This was just before the beginning of World War I. So she was trying to raise funds to have a community center for these soldiers. One gray day in January of 1914, the news was received from the doctor that Jans likely only had about 3 more weeks to live. And when that news was received, the rest of the Ten Boom family thought that they should go together and break this news to her. So they all filed up to the second story of their home where she lived, and they went into her room. And as they arrived, she laid down her writing pen. She was writing another letter requesting funds for a donation to the center for the soldiers. And she looked from face to face and saw the somber expressions. And she realized what the family members were there to communicate to her. So Corrie's father, who was named Casper, he made the first statement, and he said, "My dear sister-in-law, there is a joyous journey which each of God's children sooner or later sets out on. And Jans, some must go to their father empty-handed, but you will run to him with hands full." And then the other family members started listing out the various good works that, so to speak, that she could present to the Lord when she stepped into his presence. And they just made these short statements like, all your clubs, your writings, the funds you've raised, the talks you've given. And at that point, their well-intentioned words did not have the desired effect. Instead, she covered her face with her hands, and she began to weep. And then through her tears, she choked out the words, "Empty, empty. How can we bring anything to God What does he care for our little tricks and trinkets? And then she lowered her hands from her face and she prayed. And she said, "Dear Jesus, I thank you that we must come with empty hands. I thank you that you have done all on the cross, and that all we need in life or death is to be sure of this: